I buy old journals and diaries. I have a few disturbing tales to share. I bought this particular diary from a lady out in New Hampshire. It was dated as July 1901. I wrote it out as it was. I had never traveled this far east before. It had always been my intention to see the endless ocean of trees and mountain ranges that make up Appalachia. I have done many a trail, and am by no means an incapable or unprepared man. I set off on my adventure with a pack laden with all the necessary equipment, and enough food to see me through what was meant to be a 5-day excursion, water not needed, as the region is bisected with many a small stream from which my life-giving supply of water was to come. My father, a geologist, had been an outdoors type his whole life, traveling to many beautiful places for his work, taking me along with him when possible, trying his best to bestow upon me what he thought would come in useful on our trips out into the wild, untamed countryside. In my youth, my father and I had traversed many trails in search of adventure, most of which were found close to our home in St. Louis. My father's fate is unknown to me. The last time I had seen his weathered face was in my 15th year when he set out on one of his contracts for the United States Geological Survey, headed for the region of English Mountain. I unfortunately could not travel with him due to my schooling, so I with no small amount of dissatisfaction stayed home with my mother. The authorities in the area had come upon his worksite quite by accident, finding that the surveyor's camp had been abandoned. A badly damaged leather satchel I knew to be my father's, containing what was left of some clothing and pocket watch that we identified as belonging to him, were among the sparse items remaining in the camp. After waiting many months in the hopes of his return, my mother and I were faced with the reality of moving along with our lives, as much heartache as it would bring to the both of us. The last mention of my father's life in the public eye was a newspaper article published 4 days after the discovery of the survey camp turned over by what the authorities had dubbed an animal attack, due to the prevalence of bears in the area being the most sound of theories. However, I, as a fairly learned individual as far as the outdoors were concerned, found the idea of a bear being the culprit in the disappearance and probable murder of 7 men, among whom was a Cherokee tracker who had grown to adulthood in said region. I vowed to myself to one day make the trip to the Great Smoky Mountains to find closure, which after 18 long years had still eluded me. I had been warned of the legends and stories of that mountain being a place that God's light did not reach, that strange and unexplainable events occur in this still largely unexplored land. Many of the more superstitious folk of the region place the blame for such events on the local tribes, seeing their practices as ungodly spirit whispering. However, having grown up with a young Corps boy the same age as myself, whose home was in close proximity to my homestead, had no misconception of local traditions, and ignored these tales as outright nonsense, needing hard evidence to sway my mind. After a 2-day march, pack-laden and sunburned, I arrived in the area of English Mountain, in the last known location my father had been before his and his associates' disappearance. After 18 long years, my logic afforded me no glimmer of hope of finding anything that would paint a clearer picture of what may have happened that summer all those years ago, but perhaps seeing this place would put to bed my childlike optimism of seeing my father again. The clearing I stood in was a break from the endless sea of tress that lay all around me, perhaps half a mile square. There had been trees here, evident by all the fallen logs strewn about the area, but what struck me as odd was that no greenery was able to make its home in this parting of the forest. I stumbled over fallen tree and stump and rock, trying to find some inkling of where this camp may have lain. The grey, dry dirt beneath my feet crunched with every step, bringing my absolute isolation to the front of my mind. Should I have needed help, none would come. The silence in that desolate clearing was absolute, and a rising panic seized me as I felt my mind slowly drifting to what my father might have felt when confronted by whatever had taken his life. The moment overwhelmed me, and I struggled to walk any further. Finding the closest log, I threw my pack to the ground and pulled my water skin from it, and drank the cold, rich spring water it contained. I gave myself a moment to collect my thoughts, when, upon staring at the earth beneath me, a broken pair of half-buried spectacles stared back. I carefully extricated it from its resting place, taking care not to damage them any further, and rinsed them with some water to more clearly examine my find. It was a fairly innocuous discovery, giving me no indication as to where or when they were from, or who they belonged to, I slowly returned them to where I found them, when something in the dirt beneath it caught my attention. A ring of gold lay in the dirt, half buried right where I pulled the spectacles from. I pulled it from the ground only for a small piece of what I assumed to be wood fell from within it to the ground. I paused for a moment, as the realization slowly came screaming into my mind that what I had just dropped was a bone, most likely the proximal bone of the owner of this ring. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of my situation. What horrible fate befell these men? What beast could so utterly destroy a human carcass that finding the corpses of 7 men was not possible, to leave them in small pieces scattered over this clearing? My attention was suddenly dragged from these questions by a sound that no animal of God's creation could possibly make. A shrill scream spawned from the deepest pit of hell, not too far from where I stood. My gaze shot in the direction of the unearthly sound, the setting sun now directly in my eyes. I struggled to make out the silhouette standing just outside of the tree line, in the clearing where I was. With another agonizing, ear-piercing howl, the creature slowly came into perspective, as I realized it had dropped to all 4 of its appendages, and began a long lopping gait towards me. I have heard that in moments like this, time stands still, but the reality of my impending demise afforded me an opportunity to make a split-second decision to reach down and grasp the largest rock I could find by my feet, so as to part with my life at as high a price to this beast as possible, as the sound of the galloping grey monster closed the final 10 yards between us. My eyes shot up to it just as I had the rock in hand. It had taken a massive leap and was hurtling through the air towards me. I swung my impromptu weapon with every fiber of strength I had as the beast was an arm's length away. By some divine intervention, my swing held true, and I felt the rock make contact heavily with the beast, crashing into its face. A loud yelp like that of a hideously large and malformed dog left its mouth, as it collided head-on into me, knocking me from my feet and setting us both into the dust. I shut my eyes and awaited the beast's flurry of attacks, imagining impossibly long talons ripping into my flesh, sharpened teeth biting at my throat, but after a moment, nothing came. I opened my eyes, finding the grey creature laying half on top of me, unmoving. Its head came to rest upon my chest, where I felt warmth seeping through my clothes. I was soaked in its blood. I realized then that I was the victor, that I had overcome this creature through brute force. I flung it from me and began my attempts to make my getaway when I paused and watched to see if it still drew breath. It lay completely still, a massive gash opening the side of its head. I thought it better to ensure that I had finished this creature off, so I took the rock to its head another 2 times to ensure its expiration was complete. After some time of coming back to my senses, I thought I should inspect this terrible monster that lay before me, curiosity quite outweighing my ingrained need to run and hide. The grey beast's head was mostly hairless. Sparse spy strands of human-like hair adorned a few patches here and there. Its face was unfortunately now a mess due to my final assault on it, leaving little in the way of facial features, but the general shape, the structure, was that of a man. It had no shirt on, but a pair of what might have once been a pair of trousers half covered its lower body, but what was curious was that the ring it had on one of its gnarled, horrible fingers. I lifted its limp arm closer to my face to examine it. It was thoroughly worn and covered in filth. I pulled it from the creature's finger, when something disturbing came into my mind. I looked on the inside of the ring. An engraving had been chased in fine cursive letters, and as the letters came into meaning I fell to my knees, cursed the sky and wept. It was my father's wedding ring.